Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of It's Brewin at McEwen, a USF baseball podcast. I'm your host, Mark Giardino, and today we've got the whole gang back together. I'll be joined by both of my co hosts, Matthew Giardino and John Kaplan. Today's episode features the three of us giving our reactions to opening weekend, breaking down what we saw from the pitching staff and position players, and answering fan questions that were submitted to us on social media. The Bulls won the season opener on Friday night 8-7, but then dropped the final two games of the series. We recorded this show on Monday night, February 20th, 2023, but once you hear this, it will be Tuesday, and that means the Florida Gators are in town for a huge matchup at the Red. The game with the Gators tonight is the first in a stretch of 5 games in 6 days for the Bulls. Without further ado, let's get into the show. To John, maybe to get your initial reaction on what you saw this past weekend.
So as a whole, I would say that it was an entertaining series. The score definitely did not reflect the level of competition that was present on all three for all three games. From my end though, like I feel like with the pitching, I was relatively pleased with the outcomes of individual performances. Um, but more so just kind of perplexed at like where these pitchers were coming in. And I mean, if from listening to our podcast last week, talking about the pitching staff, and then seeing what happened, I mean, for one, it goes to show that like we have zero idea what the heck's going to happen on field. And it also shows us that I think that we're still kind of looking at like an evaluation period almost. It seems like I can't say that for certain, but if that's the case, there's a lot there to talk about. But as far as heart, as far as effort, as far as entertainment value, it was all there. The crowd was great, and just a result on the weekend isn't as desirable as the one on Friday, but we were able to steal a win from a ranked team to open the season. We got a good look at some young players on both sides of the field, and honestly, I was pretty fired up for the all weekend baseball. It was great.
Matt, what's your kind of reaction to what you saw this past weekend?
Yeah, kind of going off of what John was saying, I think it was great to see a lot of new faces. I think in total we have about 19 new additions to this ball club. But I think one thing that's kind of frustrating is, knowing that we have the talent that we do have, and I think there was a lot of opportunities to put guys in different situations that may have been a little bit more conducive of better outcomes for the overall team. But I think that, like John was saying, there was a lot of really great individual performances. You look at guys like Daniel and you look at guys like Travis Sankovic on the offensive side of things. Both of those guys had really great series and put the ball in play a lot. I think one thing that's going to be really key is to learn from this series and kind of get some consistency across the board in terms of understanding which guys to put, 1 through 4 in the lineup, or understanding which guys to put in those pivotal spots in the rotation, or coming into the game in close ball games in the bullpen.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I saw a lot of positives this weekend. I really liked some performances we got from some returners and some of the new guys. I mean, Bobby Bozer, sophomore, had a great weekend. He played a decent amount as a freshman last year. He had a really good summer, as we kind of mentioned before, with the summer league, and where he got his batting average up and he was the MVP of the league. And we were all anticipating to see if that breakthrough that he had over the summer was going to carry over to his sophomore year. And, he really started this year off with a bang. He went 4 for 9. He walked 3 times. He batted 444 on the weekend. He had 2 home runs. He just had a monster weekend, and he played at shortstop, which was a little bit surprising. We kind of thought it might be Stanton Luthner or Eric Snow, but he actually mainly held down the shortstop role. And then from a newcomer standpoint, I mean, Travis Sankovic, like you said, had a great weekend. He went 7 for 12. He had 3 RBIs, 583 batting average on the weekend. He's a fifth-year senior, transferred in from Marshall, and not only did he hit well too, but in the hot corner and third base, I mean, he made every single play. No errors, just played clean, good baseball, and that was great to see. So a lot of positives I feel like as well. But like you guys are saying, some things that we would have maybe liked to see coming out an opening weekend. I would have liked to see that the roles would have already been a little more defined. I feel like the evaluation period for who you want to be your starters, to me, is the fall ball and also the spring camp. And to me, I just saw a lot of different mixing and matching in the 1 through 4 spots in the batting order. I was kind of hoping to see just a little more consistency there. For example, on all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we had a different leadoff hitter each day. We had a different 3-hole hitter. I'm sorry, we had a different 2nd-hole hitter, and we had a different cleanup hitter each day. Just being around baseball my whole life and, following a lot of other college teams as well. The teams that have success and that host regionals, they have a consistent 1 through 4 every game, because, those are the guys that you really want to get the most at bats, and having a defined order for those guys is important as well, because that is going to allow each of those guys to know their role and what their job is within the offense. If you're a leadoff hitter, it's a different mentality than being a cleanup hitter. And if the more practice you get at your role, if you get to practice being a leadoff hitter every time you go out there, that's going to make you a better leadoff hitter versus having to hit in different places in the order. So that's just kind of the one thing that I would have liked to see differently this past weekend, and hopefully going forward, those roles will get more defined. But John, I want to let you talk a little more about pitching. Who are some of the pitchers that maybe talk about some performances that stood out to you from a pitching standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. So for starters, in the win Friday night, Hunter Mink really kind of made a name for himself for almost like a shoe-in for a weekend starter for us. I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised, because all we've ever seen are, the role we've seen him excel in is 1 to 2 inning, late bullpen relief appearances and being shut down at the back end. But he made the switch this offseason, and I truly didn't know how it was going to go. But I think he gave up 3 hits. He only walked one batter, struck out 5. So, I mean, that's a really good stat line, and he didn't give anything away for free. He did have one pitch where he wishes he could have it back. I know that, but other than that, it was really, he shined all night long. And we got definitely a captain-esque performance out of Hootie as well. He went 4 2/3 to answer Hunter Mink's 4. He gave up 4 hits, 1 earned, and the stat line that I love is walks. And Hootie did not have a single walk on the night while striking out 4. Anybody who wasn't at the games, I mean, needs to understand that one of every three of these hitters, not to put Maryland on a pedestal because I feel like we were very competitive with them. We'll get more into that, but one of it out of every three of their hitters is an All-American. They had three All-Americans, maybe even four in their lineup, and they were extremely competitive. I think this is only the beginning of what we're going to be able to see out of our starting rotation and our bullpen. But those two starts, I mean, even Austin Grouse was impressive in spots as well. But I think it's an overall as a theme. I just feel like roles and congruency is lacking at this stage, and it can be chalked up as it's still early in the season, and those roles are going to start to define themselves as we move along. But it's kind of like, to build on your point of that's what fall and spring that's what fall and spring scrimmages are supposed to be for, to evaluate talent, to create that depth chart and formulate a plan for when the number 12 Maryland team is in Tampa. But I would like to see, I mean, just to further address this starting rotation, we all had Bug as the Friday night guy, Jackson as the Saturday night guy, and then we find out come game time that they're first out of the bullpen, and it's really, I know I was not the only person shocked by this. I think they belong in the rotation. I hope whatever evaluation period was going on is over. And I think that we need to stick to what we know and work in the unknowns at the right times, because we're not facing Niagara anymore. We're not facing Bradley. We're facing Maryland. We're facing UF. We're facing good teams out of the gate for the non-conference opponents, and I think that evaluating our best talent is equally as important as evaluating all of our talent holistically. There's going to be a time for everyone to get in the game, but we need to create structure early on, because you were talking about how the leadoff hitter, not to go in y'all's avenue, but it's not only is it's gonna change how they train, too. Just like a starting pitcher versus a bullpen pitcher, it's gonna change how they train. So I really think it's important to establish structure and roles early on. That way, when conference play starts, we're taking the entire conference by storm. Because I know for certain that this roster is capable of doing it, especially after watching the first three games of the season. But my main thing is just we need roles.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I have to say, like, Friday night, it was huge to get that win, right? People within the program have said the goal this season is to win the conference, to host a regional, um, to go on from there. In order to, make it to the NCAA tournament and potentially host a regional, you gotta, every game counts. Every game on the schedule counts equally. A win right now is just as important as a win at the end of the year, because it all goes to your RPI, and your RPI is really what the committee uses to select the teams from at-large bids. And if you don't get an at-large bid, you have to go to Clearwater and win that whole thing, which is very difficult to do. So I feel like when we won that game on Friday night, it was really setting up such a great opportunity, where, we scored 8 runs on Friday night. And Saturday, I was really expecting that we would come out with the same lineup that had won that game the night before. And, it ends up that we end up making multiple substitutions. And to me, that was just made it more feel like it was an evaluation game than a game of, hey, this is an opportunity to win the series against number 13 team in the country. Let's go with the top 9 hitters that we evaluated in the fall and the spring and stick with them. And to me, it was just surprising to change that overnight when you had such a good opportunity to win a series. And so, yeah, kind of we kind of gave our broad kind of takes on the weekend and everything. But I want to take it back to pitching. So John, in terms of pitching, one of the positives from the weekend was a lot of different guys appeared during the weekend. It was actually 14 of the, I think it's 17 pitchers on the roster um, got to pitch. So, you get to see a lot of guys. You get to see what kind of stuff they have. From seeing what you saw, um, what type of roles do you think some of these guys are going to be fitting into, or at least do you think that they should be fitting into from what you saw?
I think one thing that carries over from last week is absolutely it's going to depend on what happens with the starting rotation. I mean, the general theme of what I'm hearing is that is not going to be our starting rotation moving forward, and I would really hope that we get to a point where we have like a 1 through 4, which I think we do, or at least I have an idea. But I'm gonna say that I think that, I mean, if Ethan and Jackson are not in the rotation, then they are absolutely my first out of the bullpen on each side, from the left and the right side. I was really impressed with both of their outings. I know Bogue ran into a little trouble with walks, but he fought his ass off, and then Jackson went 1 1/3 and um, didn't give up any walks. Getting to see his outing on TV as opposed to in person, I got to see a bunch of different angles and hit the life on all of his pitches was exactly as advertised. So they would absolutely be my first out of the bullpen, but I really think that they're going to end up in the rotation. So with that being said, we didn't get to see CA. I think CA is going to have a huge place in the bullpen rotation from the left side. But I would say that for the closing role, if we are going to establish a closer, it was a limited sample size, but I really liked what I saw out of Riley Skeen. Not like overpowering stuff with his fastball, but he was sitting low to mid 90s, and that slider is what would make him an elite closer, because you don't need 3 pitches to be a great closer. Look at Mariano Rivera. Like, you just need command of one great pitch, and I'm telling you right now, that's probably one of the best sliders on the entire staff. It had a lot of cut and a lot of bite, and I think he could be a good closer. As far as bullpen, I really liked seeing Justin Jackson get in the call. It was very unexpected for me, but he answered the call and did so really extremely well, in my opinion. I think he struck out 2. He also did not walk anybody. I feel like the people we've really highlighted so far are kind of outliers in a theme that was also present last season in walks. We had 18 on the weekend, and that number is way too high. So we also have to address that. But as far as bullpen rotation, I still have to go with Tanner Mink. He was struggling leaving the ball up a little bit, but when he did get control of that, his stuff was incredible to watch. I think CA is probably going to be one of the first lefties out of the bullpen. And from there, I mean, it's really just going to be hot hand, because Punsack had a less than desirable outing, but I still that has zero bearing on the role that I think he's going to have for our team moving forward. Also, Chandler Dorsey. He was one of the names that I was a little less familiar with coming into the season. Even he could be evaluated for a closing role because he was electric.
Yeah, and kind of just to go back on one more thing with pitching, I think one name you didn't mention, John, is Lawson Gailey. And he came into the game in a really tough situation with the bases loaded, and I think he had a challenging at bat or a challenging hitter to face, guy that really is known for his power, and he got a fastball up in the zone, and he put it away. And I think after that, he really had a really strong outing and showed a lot of composure on the mound. And I think that he's kind of set himself up for a pretty successful freshman year. And I think his stuff is pretty top notch as well. And he also didn't have any walks either. So I think that he's a guy that we're looking to really rely on, kind of like we relied on Joey Vellini last year as a freshman. I think that he could fill a similar role coming out of the bullpen.
Um, we got a few questions on Twitter. I'll bring up some of them. So we had a question from at Heath Hunt 75. Conference play has been a big issue the last few years. How does this year's team stack up in the AAC? My take on that is really just, it's really not even about AAC or not AAC, because our schedule right now is just as difficult or more difficult than what we'll see in the AAC. So really it's going to be about, can we start building an identity as a good baseball team? Can we start having a consistent lineup? Really truly identifying who are the 8 or 9 guys that need to be, or 7, 8, 9 guys that need to be in the lineup every day. You might have 1 or 2, changes lineup wise, maybe in a platoon situation, or you want to give a catcher a day off. But I think there needs to be a defined starter at every position, and as long as we do that, the talent on the team is good enough to we almost won a series against the number 13 team in the country, and if you can do that, you can do well in the AAC. So that's kind of my take on that. We had another question from Jared Chandler. Do you expect the weekend rotation to change? If so, in what way? I'll kind of kick that to John.
Yeah, I definitely think we could see some names floating around, but I'm going to stick to my hand and say that I think that our Friday night starter should be Ethan Brown. He had a great outing out of the bullpen, but he really made a name for himself as a starter last season. I think Jackson needs to be our Saturday guy. He mixes his pitches up well. He's got the velo to, keep batters on their toes. And with what we saw from Hunter, I think he would be a great Sunday starter. So I think right there, Bug, Jackson, and Hunter Mink would be my ideal weekend rotation.
Where do you put Hootie then?
Weekend or midweek starter. He would be a great midweek starter. Or you have him coming out first lefty out of the pen. Have CA come in after him. Have CA be more of a late bullpen guy. But Hootie absolutely was impressive. But he's going to be impressive no matter where he's plugged in, because he's one of, if not the smartest pitcher on our staff, baseball IQ wise.
Yeah, no, he's the guy that could be successful in any role. I mean, he already
Which is
proved this.
great.
Yeah, exactly. Which maybe not everybody has the versatility that Hootie has. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that you could put him in different roles for sure. Um, but yeah, no, I feel like he's somebody that I kind of do expect to stay in the weekend rotation just because of his performance. But I feel like to go back to Jared's original question, yeah, I do think the weekend rotation will change to some extent, kind of like John said. There are guys who, we only got to see them pitch a couple innings this past weekend, but watching them, you could see that they have the makings of a quality weekend starting pitcher. Some of the names he mentioned, Jackson Cawthorn and Ethan Brown, um, that's kind of like their profile. They are starting pitchers from their backgrounds. So yeah, you could expect changes in the weekend rotation, just depending on how things go. Um, there's also a question from at Coach AJC12 on Twitter. He says a lot of questions about the pitching staff, but that was a tough lineup to open on for such a young staff. So my question is, what do you think of Britcher in right field, and which of the three catchers did you like the most?
Matt?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think in terms of Brocher in right field, I think that that he's such a versatile player. You could put him at any of the three outfield positions, and I think he's gonna field that position at an above replacement level player. But I think it offers him a lot of opportunities to cover a lot of ground in right field. And I think throughout the season you might see him rob a couple of home runs as well, especially with his height and his athleticism. And then what was the second part of the question?
Oh, the catchers. We got to see three catchers this past weekend. Who do you think is, who was your or who do you think is like the starter? Or
I
yeah.
think there hasn't been enough time really for me to really make a determination. Obviously they all had one start apiece, and my opinion of each of them didn't necessarily change a whole lot through watching them. I think one thing that is important is I think we're going to probably have to give Nelson Rivera a lot more time behind the plate and maybe not necessarily play as much around with that position, just because he comes from a lot of experience, and he held down that position really well last year and had really strong second half of the season, and started to develop a lot of ways in his power, and he carried that over into the summer.
Yeah, Matt, and to kind of build on what you said, I think with catcher, kind of look just like we said with every other position, really, but especially catcher. I think you got to pick a starter and go with your guy, because that's another position that continuity is important. Building that relationship with the pitchers, knowing that that this is your catcher, this is your guy. If you're a pitcher and you have that relationship and you know what to expect, yeah, and I think the fact that Nelson Rivera is kind of that's really his position. He's not a guy you're going to stick in left field. Whereas you could do that with Ben Rosenblum, or you could do that with Monkey. Nelson Rivera is a catcher, and he's a good one. And um, he's always had a penchant for clutch hits. When he was just a true freshman at the University of Florida regional, he was getting a big hit against the Gators, get the rally, RBI in the first inning. Like last season in the conference tournament, he hit a grand slam. He's in his third year of the program. He's a catcher. I think he needs to be the everyday catcher. To me, catcher is a position where you have your main guy out there every day, but when he needs a day off, like because with a busy week, you give him one day off, maybe put the backup in. But no, you don't. You don't have three catchers. You have a starting catcher and you have a backup, in my opinion. I had a couple other questions. These came from Instagram. Drew Humphrey, shout out to you. He said, not a question, just saying I love the show. Thank you for that. He also said, what were your thoughts on the offense against Maryland and thoughts on the offense against Florida coming up? Yeah, so I think the offense against Maryland, we had some good moments. We kind of struck out probably more than I would like to see. 28 strikeouts in 112 plate appearances. That's striking out 25% of the time, which is an even higher rate than we struck out last season. So that needs to be cleaned up. But we did have some. We did, we were able to score runs. 8 runs the first night. Second game, not as much, but there's the offense looks, all the pieces are in place. Like I said before earlier in the show, that guys need to have consistent spots in the batting order and know what their role is on the offense and just get good at that. And so that's kind of my thoughts. But going up against the Gators is always going to be tough. They're going to have great depth with their pitching staff. So even though you're facing their midweek players to Tuesday and Wednesday night, you're probably still going to be getting guys in the mid 90s. So it's not going to be easy, but we just faced great arms this past weekend, so it's not going to be anything new. Our guys will be ready for it.
I kind of want to add something too to the offense. This past series, I think Friday night we did an awesome job of getting to what was considered a preseason All-American by multiple baseball publications. Scoring 8 runs on that level of talent pitching is something to be really proud of.
Yeah.
One thing about the offense is last season, I feel like our ceiling for competing with teams via like the route of playing small ball, it was pretty low. I feel like we were every hitter was trying to be the guy, to who's going to hit the next one out, and don't get me wrong, we hit a lot of home runs last year, but there was times when, small ball is the answer. And one thing that I'd like to say is that not only does Sankovic add a variable on defense that is a game changer, but 7 hits on the weekend. He was just a rally. He was a catalyst for rallies all weekend long. And I don't know how many singles there were in there, but he only had 2 doubles, so 5 of them were singles. I would really like to see this team, go station to station, and win via small ball too. And that's very exciting for me.
Let me get to another question from Instagram. Early looks for who is going to be the captain, who is going to be the leader for the team based on what you saw this past weekend. I'll kind of let everybody give their take. For me, it's still Daniel Cantu. He had a great productive weekend at the plate. He was 4 for 11. He had a home run. He scored 5 runs. He drew a walk. He only struck out twice. He had a really productive weekend at the plate. Played solid at first base as well. Made some really nice plays. And he's in his 4th year, and he was a key part of the 2021 team. And he's just brings so much positive energy to the team each day. And he's to me he's the captain. But I'm happy to hear what John and Matt have to say.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about captain, I think that you can talk about it as one captain, or you can look at offensive, and pitching. I feel like from from like a team standpoint overall, I think loud and clear it's Daniel Cantu, especially from like an offensive standpoint, and also I feel like his role, um, just as an overall commander on the defense, is more prominent at first base, and he's been playing some really good first base from what I've seen both in scrimmages and in the opening weekend. And as for leader of the pitching staff, I'm kind of torn between two players, but um, I'll go with Ethan Brown. You know, he was the first one out on the field to, dap up the players and keep everybody's minds right. And he was vocal. He was uh, picking players up, and I mean he's a senior, so that's he's playing his role and doing it well. So I think him and Cantu for me are probably my two leaders in the dugout.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of more about, experience and I think passion and I think there's, quite a few guys on our team that really exemplify those traits. And for me, I think, you're pretty spot on about Daniel Cantu. I think that's the most clear cut guy when you think of captain on this team. But, you look at the pitching staff and you look at you guys like Nolan Hootie. I think one thing that really stood out to me was, even though the double play was reversed on Saturday, but the type of passion and emotion that a guy like that shows when his teammates make a big play like that. He was pumping his fists, and you could just see how much like winning as a team means to him. And I think that really shows what kind of person he is. I think beyond that, we also have guys that are a little bit more maybe quiet leaders on the team. And, you look at guys like Ben Rosenblum and you look at Nelson Rivera. Both those guys have a lot of experience. And, whether they are having a good game or a bad game, I think that those guys are role models for a lot of the younger kids on the team.
I'm 11 out of 10 invested in this roster after losing 2 out of 3 to Maryland. 11 out of 10, and that's not an exaggeration. And
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think
know we all are.
I think my closing thought is kind of very similar to yours. My closing thought is, from what I saw this past weekend, I mean, this roster is a lot better talent wise than last year's, as a
Way
as a
deeper.
as a yeah, way deeper. And our defense has improved tremendously. We really only had one error that I could think of, um, which is a huge improvement. Um, you know, guys have appeared to have really shown some growth in the offseason. Like Bobby Bozer seems to have really taken a step forward. Um, some pitchers really showed that they've got some really nasty stuff or like good mound presence. I could name a positive trait that I saw in every pitcher that appeared, and we saw 14 out of the 17 pitchers, and that's actually one other fan question was, why were some of the bullpen players not used? But we saw a lot of them. We saw 14 out of 17. There was really only three guys that didn't really get action yet, but you can expect everybody to be used definitely within the next 2 days against the Gators. But my closing thought really is all the potential is there to achieve the goals that this team wants. They want to win the conference. They want to go to the NCAA's, and all the talent is there. It's just can we solidify the roles? Need to have your starters, you have your backups, you have your third strings, and just keep it that simple. Like, that's what all the good teams that are achieving those goals are doing. They have their depth chart set up, and they have a system in place, and I think as long as that happens, the guys on this team, they can get the job done from a player standpoint for sure. Any closing thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, so I like you said, I think from a personnel standpoint, we're probably the deepest that we've been as a team since maybe that 2018 team that we had, that was pretty successful. I think I think you summarized it pretty well. Finding the right roles for the guys and being able to put them in a position where they could find success. Finding the right matchups for the guys at any given time, and being able to put those people into positions of where they're gonna have the best outcomes. I think that's really what it comes down to. And overall, I think we have the right players in place, and really excited about a lot of things I saw over the past weekend. And I think one thing that I'm really excited about is a lot of the young kids. They looked a lot older out on the field than you typically would expect from a freshman. A lot of composure on the mound, and I think in terms of at the plate, there's some experience to gain there. But overall, the talent is pretty clearly visible, and I think that as long as everything is put in the right place, we're gonna have a pretty successful season this year.
Sweet. Yeah, I think everybody closing thoughts, I agree with them as well. And I feel like we're all excited for this upcoming week. We get to see 5 USF baseball games in the span of 6 days. Yeah, 5 games in 6 days. That's going to be pretty fun. We're going to see a lot. We're going to learn a lot more about the team. We're all looking forward to it. Matt and I are actually going to be in Boca Raton for the Saturday and Sunday games. So we can't wait, and we're just looking forward to this upcoming week. So with that, do you guys have any thoughts going forward into these next 2 games against the Gators?
I think you covered it pretty well, Mark. I think we know anytime you play against the Gators, you know you're going to be facing elite level competition. Um, we have a pretty good track record against them, so it's always exciting when we go up against them. We know what we're going to get from their pitching staff. They're going to be deep. They're going to have velo. They're going to have multiple guys. But I know that I believe that we're going to be able to see Jack Siebert get his first start, and I know we're all pretty fired up about that. So that is going to be, I believe, Tuesday night at home if our calculations are correct. So hopefully we can get to see the hard work that he's been putting in all summer and fall pay off.
For sure, and I'll give a quick shout out to the 2 pitchers that besides Jack Siebert that we haven't seen yet. Josh Cohn is a true freshman from Bradenton that I've been really high on all the podcasts that we've done. Again, I saw him in the fall, and he was really effective in the fall scrimmage that I saw, and I'm looking forward to his debut. And we're also looking forward to Parker CA's debut. The guy we've also talked about a lot, another left-handed pitcher, just like Josh Cohn. He's a little different. He's coming from JUCO, where he spent 3 years actually because of the COVID year. So he's an older guy. He's a veteran. We're really looking forward to seeing his debut out of the bullpen too. And with that, we appreciate everybody listening today. We always enjoy talking USF baseball, and we're looking forward to this week. We're going to get to see 5 games in 6 days. So, we think we learned a lot this past weekend. We're gonna learn even more this week. So we're really looking forward to it. So thanks, John. Thanks, Matt. Talk to you guys soon.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.